The figure of a three-faced Jesus, one body, three visages, stands as one of the most unsettling and theologically provocative depictions in Christianity. At first glance, it appears as an aberration, a grotesque misstep in the otherwise harmonious iconography of the divine. Yet this representation is no accident. It is a deliberate attempt to grapple with an ineffable mystery, the paradox of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as one God, a concept that has confounded theologians, philosophers, and artists for centuries. The significance of the trifacial Christ, however, does not end with Christian doctrine. It acts as a mirror, reflecting deeper psychological, mythological, and existential truths about the human condition. It speaks to the multiplicity within unity, the coexistence of contradictory selves within a single being, and the ancient, cross-cultural recognition that the divine, and by extension the self, is never simple. It is layered, paradoxical, and at times disturbingly complex. The doctrine of the Trinity is one of Christianity's most profound and confounding mysteries. How can God be both singular and plural? How can the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be distinct yet one? Early Christian thinkers wrestled with this question, and the trifacial Jesus emerges as a visual attempt to reconcile the irreconcilable. The concept of a triune God is not explicitly spelled out in the Bible, but is inferred from passages like Matthew 28:19, where Jesus commands his disciples to baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and 2 Corinthians 13:14, which speaks of the grace of Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Spirit. Early church fathers, such as Tertullian and Augustine, developed the language of three persons, one substance, but the tension remained: how to depict the undepictable. Medieval and Renaissance artists experimented with various Trinitarian representations. The most common was the Throne of Mercy, where God the Father holds the crucified Christ while the Holy Spirit as a dove hovers between them. But some ventured further, merging the three into a single, three-faced figure, a literalization of the Trinity. The most famous example is a 17th century fresco in the Church of St. Blaise in Dubrovnik, Croatia, depicting Christ with three faces. Similar representations appear in other European churches, though the Catholic Church later condemned such images as heretical distortions. Pope Urban VIII banned them in 1628, declaring them monstrous and heretical. According to the Church, these paintings terrified the faithful, making prayer before such a disturbing image impossible. The three-faced Christ blurs the line between unity and separation too boldly. It risks veering into modalism, the heresy that the Trinity is merely three modes of one person, or even polytheism. Yet, its very audacity makes it a powerful symbol of divine mystery, one that refuses neat theological categorization. If the three-faced Jesus is a theological paradox, it is also a psychological one. It mirrors the fragmented yet unified nature of human consciousness. Just as the Trinity contains distinct persons within one God, the human psyche contains multiple selves within one mind. Sigmund Freud, the Austrian psychologist, saw psychological imbalance as arising from unresolved tensions between the three parts of the psyche: the id, the primal instinctual self driven by desires and impulses; the ego, the rational mediator balancing the id's urges with reality; and the superego, the moral conscience internalized from societal norms. Freud's model suggests that the self is not singular but a negotiation between competing forces, much like the Trinity's dynamic interplay. Carl Jung took this further with his theory of archetypes, universal inherited patterns of behavior or symbols that resonate across cultures. This resonance stems from their numinous nature, a quality that captivates and stirs our emotions. However, aligning oneself too closely with these archetypes can lead to psychological imbalance, often resulting in ego inflation. This occurs when one's sense of identity becomes disproportionately amplified, fostering delusions of grandeur, megalomania, and ultimately self-destruction. Archetypes operate on a primal level, tied more to instinct than ethical or moral concerns. The role of the human ego is to temper these archetypal forces with a sense of moral responsibility. This task is crucial not only for our internal balance, but also for maintaining harmony in the external world. Carl Jung highlighted this challenge, stating, "The images of the unconscious place a great responsibility upon a man. Failure to understand them, or a shirking of ethical responsibility, deprives him of his wholeness and imposes a painful fragmentariness on his life." For Jung, the self is the totality of the psyche, encompassing all contradictions. It is both one and many, containing the persona, the mask we wear to conceal our true self, the shadow, the repressed, darker aspects of our psyche that we do not want to accept, and the anima or animus, the unconscious feminine or masculine within. The three-faced Christ, then, becomes a symbol of the integrated self, not a denial of multiplicity, but an acceptance of it. Jung himself saw the Trinity as an incomplete archetype, missing the shadow, hence his interest in the quaternity, adding a fourth element, often the devil or Satan. Jung saw Satan as the personification of Christ's suppressed dark side, reflecting the inner conflict of humanity. This duality, Jung believed, was vital for growth. It allowed humans to grapple with freedom, morality, and self-realization. Without the devil's rebellion, humanity would remain mechanical, with no opportunity for consciousness or transcendence. If one looks closer into the Bible, they'll realize that the character of Satan is not as clear-cut as modern interpretations suggest. In the Old Testament, the term Satan appears 27 times, mostly in the book of Job. However, it isn't a name but a title, the Satan, meaning the adversary. This figure tempers the soul. Here, Satan is not the enemy of God, but part of his divine nature. His role is to test, to challenge, and to reveal the truth through hardship. He strips everything down to expose the truth. For example, in Job's story, Satan questions Job's faithfulness, arguing that his loyalty is merely a product of his prosperity. God the Father then permits Satan to strip Job of his wealth, health, and family, not as punishment but as a way to test the depth of Job's faith. Through suffering, Job confronts the raw power of God and emerges with a deeper understanding. In the end, Job is no longer just reading about God or hearing about him. He experiences God in all his glory, and it's an overwhelming moment of realization. Job falls to the ground, kissing the dust and begging for forgiveness. He becomes the archetypal faithful servant of God. This moment could never have happened without the work of Satan, without the adversary breaking Job's world apart to reveal the truth of who God truly is to him. This portrayal is a far cry from the Satan of the New Testament, who has evolved into a cosmic adversary. Here, Satan is the prince of darkness, the tempter, the deceiver, an independent force working against God's will with everything he's got. The tension between them is endless. This stark duality, God as absolute good and Satan as absolute evil, is a hallmark of Christian theology, but it raises a question. If God is all-powerful, how can an opposing force exist outside his control? The answer lies in how humanity interprets good and evil. In the Old Testament, we see a much more complex image of God. He's not just pure love, he's fire, brimstone, and jealousy too. God, in this sense, is more holistic, more integrated. Yes, he loves his people, but he also has a fierce, demanding side. He is a God of love, but also of wrath, justice, and vengeance. The New Testament simplifies this view, presenting God as pure love and assigning all negative traits to Satan. This dualistic view creates a clear division, but oversimplifies the complexity of existence. Life is not purely good or purely evil. It's a tapestry of both, intertwined in ways that are often hard to unravel. This evolution of Satan's role reflects humanity's shifting understanding of morality. The Trifacial Jesus, in its unsettling triplicity, forces us to confront the fact that wholeness does not mean uniformity. Contemporary psychology acknowledges that identity is not fixed. We contain the past self, who we were, the present self, who we are, and the future self, who we might become. We also shift between roles, parent, child, professional, rebel, without losing our core identity. The three-faced Christ in this light is not an isolated phenomenon, but profoundly human. Across religions and mythologies, triune deities appear again and again, suggesting a deep, perhaps universal, recognition that divinity, and by extension reality itself, is structured in threes. In Hinduism, the cosmic functions are divided among three gods: Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. Though distinct, they are aspects of one ultimate reality, Brahman. Some depictions, like the three-faced Trimurti statue in the Elephanta caves, visually merge them, much like the three-faced Christ. In Greek mythology, Cerberus is a three-headed dog who guards the underworld, preventing the dead from escaping. The three heads can respectively see the past, present, and future. In pagan traditions, the divine feminine is often split into three phases: the maiden, representing youth and potential, the mother, embodying creation and nurturing, and the crone, symbolizing wisdom and death. This triad reflects the cycles of life, time, and nature, echoing the Christian Trinity's interplay of generation: the Father, incarnation, the Son, and inspiration, the Spirit. Other examples include the fates of Greek mythology: Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, weavers of destiny; the Morrigan, a Celtic triple goddess of war and sovereignty; and Heti, the Greek goddess of crossroads, depicted as three-faced. These triads suggest that the human mind instinctively perceives fundamental forces in triplicate: creation, preservation, destruction, past, present, future, thought, emotion, action. The three-faced Jesus, then, is more than a theological curiosity. It is an invitation to embrace paradox, to recognize that unity does not erase difference, and that wholeness is not homogeneity. Modern culture craves simplicity. We want clear binaries: good versus evil, us versus them, sacred versus profane. But the trifacial Christ disrupts this. It says the divine is not simple, neither are you. Jungian psychology teaches that integration, not repression, leads to wholeness. We must acknowledge our contradictions: the saint and the sinner, the child and the adult, the creator and the destroyer. The three-faced Jesus, in its eerie multiplicity, models this acceptance. The figure unsettles because it defies expectations. But perhaps the divine should unsettle. If God is truly transcendent, then neat, anthropomorphic depictions fail. The grotesque, the three-faced Christ, the multi-armed Kali in Hindu mythology, the winged Ezekiel's wheels in Christian mysticism, reminds us that the sacred is beyond human categories. The three-faced Jesus is a profound meditation on the nature of divinity and selfhood. It tells us that to be whole is not to be uniform, but to contain multitudes, to be, in T.S. Eliot's words, a field of holy faces. In the end, the trifacial Christ is a mirror. Stare long enough and you see not just God, but yourself, fractured, contradictory, yet mysteriously one. The three-faced Jesus challenges us to move beyond simplistic dualities and embrace the complexity of existence. It is a symbol that refuses to be tamed, just as the human psyche refuses to be reduced to a single narrative. The divine, like the self, is a tapestry of contradictions, a unity that encompasses diversity, a oneness that contains multiplicity. This is the unsettling, transformative power of the three-faced Christ. It does not offer answers, but invites us into the mystery. And in that mystery, we find not just God, but the depths of our own souls. The three-faced Jesus is not merely an artistic anomaly or a theological outlier. It is a profound expression of the human struggle to comprehend the incomprehensible. It is a visual paradox that mirrors the paradox of existence itself. In a world that demands clarity and certainty, the trifacial Christ stands as a testament to the beauty of ambiguity, the necessity of contradiction, and the sacredness of the unresolved. It is a reminder that truth is not found in simplicity, but in the embrace of complexity. That wholeness is not the absence of contradiction, but the harmony of opposites. And in that recognition, we find not just a deeper understanding of God, but a deeper understanding of ourselves. The three-faced Christ, then, is more than an image. It is an experience, an encounter with the divine that shatters our expectations and expands our understanding. It is a challenge to see beyond the surface, to embrace the mystery, and to recognize that the sacred is not a fixed point, but a dynamic, ever-unfolding reality. In the end, the three-faced Jesus is not just a depiction of God. It is an invitation to wonder, to question, and to dwell in the mystery of being. And in that dwelling, we may find not just answers, but the courage to live with the questions. The three-faced Jesus is a mirror, a paradox, a challenge, and an invitation. It is a symbol of the divine that refuses to be contained, just as the human spirit refuses to be reduced. In its unsettling triplicity, it offers not confusion but clarity, not in spite of its complexity, but because of it. For in the end, the mystery of the Trinity is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be lived. And in living that reality, we may find that the three faces of Christ are not three at all, but one. Just as we, in all our contradictions, are not many, but mysteriously, beautifully one.